everybody, we're going to do a quick tutorial about putting in some overhead lights into our scene. So our previous lighting tutorial was more focused on lighting like a little like still life, so we used 3-point lighting for that. For this project, we have more expansive scenes since they're like a whole part of a room. So we're probably going to want like an overall like sun style of a light, and then you're going to complement the scene the other way with the point lights, the area lights, spotlights for more like the artificial light in the space. I did post some resources on the Discord to both a link to like a wiki page for movies that have won for looking good basically. So I would recommend for lighting your scene actually go in, find a reference image to use. So find a movie that kind of fits the like vibe you want for your scene. Really analyze that image, where the main light is coming from, how the shadows, how like blurry or intense the shadows are, how far into the space that light goes. Are there any other like accompanying lights, any artificial lights, what color the lights are. So usually cinematography is a great reference to go for. Otherwise, you could also look into architectural photography, because the actual job of that is to like capture that space well, regardless of the lighting. So find a reference for your scene, just copy that, and to really like push that realism of the lighting in your space. But really today I want to show, make sure I'm showing my screen. Yeah, okay. How we would just put in the overhead light. Because there's two ways to do that. One is going to be more doable for everyone's computer. The other one might be potentially like crashy, glitchy with some of your guys' computers if they've been struggling up to this point. So first way is going to be putting in sun lamps. So let me make this full screen. Pop in a sun lamp here. So the thing with the sun lamp is it's kind of like a godly light that has no actual source. So it looks like it's coming from the sun right here. Actually, let me turn this on over here for a sec. But you can see right now it's casting light down onto the top of this building, shadow beneath. If I move this beneath this whole scene, you can see it still keeps that same lighting scheme. So the location of your sun doesn't matter, because it's just like assuming it's this large sun in the sky. What you can change is the angle, the intensity, the color of it. So really you're just going to determine the time of day and choose that angle. So if you want it to be like winter or closer to evening or morning, you could have the longer shadows. Otherwise you can have a more overhead light. And then in your the little green icon, the properties for that object, we can of course change the strength. Usually 1 is going to work perfectly fine. If you did make your scene at a different scale than like lifelike, you might have to play around with it. You might need to make it stronger or weaker, but 1 should usually properly light up your scene. For the sun, you're probably going to want to make it a slightly, ever so slightly yellowish color. If you want it to be a specific time of day, you might go a little bit more intense with that color. So if I want it to be sunset or sunrise, you could really push into those orangey tones. And the thing with using the sunlight is to properly get the complexity of like just like overhead lighting is we actually want 2 suns. So we're going to have 1 sun act as the sun, and we're going to have 1 sun act as the sky itself, because it's not just the sun that's like lighting everything up. And we'll actually see that a bit better when we put in those HDR maps, the images, because that's why they're the preferred choice, is they're going to be lighting the scene from the whole image rather than just the sun. So again, if the HDR image strategy doesn't work well with your computer, it just like makes it crash and everything, or it's just like so slow, you can get a comparable result with these sun lamps. So you're going to use two. Again, one is the sun, give it that more like yellowy hue. The other one is going to act as our sky, so it's going to be more of that blue tone. I went real intense, but you probably don't want it to be this intense. But we're going all in. And then I'm going to make it weaker than my sun, just to really emphasize that the sun is the main part of my lighting. But now you can see in the render view, I have the orangier light from the sun, and the shadows actually have a kind of like a little bit more depth to them, where they have more blue mixed into them. This is way too intense. I was really excited, okay? So you could again play around with the color and strength of these things based off of the time of day you want. If you want it to be nighttime, you could make this blue a deeper, like purplier blue. You can make the sun more moonlight, so it'd be a little bit more white. It'd probably be weaker, just to give it a little more low light. And you can see it's not lighting up that whole interior space, so this is just to give just a general overhead, like sun, outdoor natural light coming in into your space. So how much it actually lights up will be how much like actual windows and anything you have. So this whole thing is closed off, so I could kind of cheese it and make additional windows to bring in more light. But otherwise, I can just pop in again a point light or not sunlight, that's what we're doing, spotlight or area light to have some artificial lights in there. And I actually have some bulbs set up. So with these, I could put the principled BSDF, PPR material, oh, I guess it's the same thing, on it with emission. Or I can put an emission shader on it. So the principled BSDF with emission, it doesn't actually cast light onto objects around it. So I'd have to use that with a point light inside of it to kind of like give it the illusion that it's casting light. There's also if I change this to the emission shader, you can see they're now glowing. And let me unhide this roof. And I actually have control over the strength of it now, so I can make it actually cast light into the space. So any combination of the other lights to get an accent light in there to light up the space. I do have like the tiniest little light coming from these candles in the corner. I could probably bump those up or put them strategically over there. You may also want to play around with area lights. These work really well for just like commercial lights. Just those like ceiling ones. But you can also place them if I just need a light in this whole space. I can scale this up, pop that beneath the roof, and now you can see it's lighting everything up pretty well. You can also play around with the direction it's pointing, so let me go into this view, or actually let me go into this view. You can see this has a direction to it, so it's pointing down into the space, but I can also rotate it, flip it over so it's pointing up, so now it's projecting the light directly at the ceiling, and now it's bouncing around the space, so it's not a direct light, it's more the diffuse light affecting everything. Oh my god, it's so bright. I probably wouldn't want that in my space. Unless I made it dimmer. So that's strat 1, is popping in 2 suns. One is the sun, one is the sky, to kind of give you your natural light a little bit more depth to it. The preferred strat is going to be using an HDR image. So a lot of these are online. They're like really high file sizes. They're really expensive, but there is this website I did link again on our Discord under that class resources channel. It's HDR Haven. It has free, totally free HDRs. You don't have to reference anyone. And they do have a really good selection, and they do have like variations in how high of resolution you want. They might just be a little less quality than the ones that you'd go in and spend like $100 on, but I would not recommend spending $100 on one of these. When you're picking one, really look at how it's affecting these shader balls. You have example like lighting in a scene at the bottom, so how far the shadows are going, how intense the shadows are, if there's any color being cast onto the ball, surrounding lights. So that's more important than really what the scene is, because we can always block what the surrounding scene is. So pick something that matches the kind of like intensity level of light you're going for, and hopefully it also is one that like fits the landscape if you do want it in the background. But let me do this. Wait, I need intense. I always want to do like one of these fun ones, but I need to do the intense shadows to show you guys how you can change the shadows. Let me do this little garden. So you can go in, download one of them. I would recommend just starting off with the 2K. If it is like super low quality pixelated, you could potentially go up to 4K, but look at the large increase in that file size. So try to stay down at the 2K. It will still give you proper lighting, but it's more like if it's going to be in the background of your scene, you don't want it to look like super chunky. So download it, save it into whatever you have your folder of materials is, and you can see it's going to be an HDR file. That's what you want. If you try to open this just on your computer, it's probably going to open up Photoshop or something. Paste. Garden. And to pop this in, first I'm going to destroy the sun. To pop this in, we're going to go to our world properties. So world properties, under the surface section, under color, click on that little option circle, and we want environment texture. So this is where I usually get confused, because usually when we bring stuff in, it's images, but this time we want environment texture. So click on that. It's going to give you that beautiful missing texture info neon pink light. And then we just have to hit open and find where we have it saved. Garden. And you can see when we pop it in, the whole world, if you're in the render view. So you won't see it if you're just in the like generic shading. In the render view, you'll see it. You'll see that image. Again, it's like one of those panoramic 360 everywhere photos. It's going to make a sphere of photo that is also lighting your scene. So let me get rid of this friend. If we look at it a little bit closer, actually this is kind of nice. When I'm scrolling, you can see some green light is being cast onto it, and that's because I have all of this greenery coming down. So it's getting color from everything. It's getting light from everything. It's getting it not just from the sun, but the trees, the ground, the sky. So it's going to have more depth to it. This is why it is the preferred way, but also why it's the more intense for your computer way. But you will see like shadows based off of where the sun is. So the shadows in your scene are going to match the shadows in the image. Oh, you can really see some green in the shadows right here from that tree. So once you pop it in, you can always play around with the strength of it. If this is a little bit too bright or too weak, you can always either up or down the strength. But the one thing the major change I'm envisioning you guys would need to make is where the sun is coming from. So right now, it's coming in, oh my god, did I just crash my blender? Be back soon. Okay, we're fine. Nothing happened. It just got a little scared. I think because I have so many like render previews open. Let me go to the shading menu. So right now my sun is coming like from the right into the door. Say I want it coming from the left coming into the door. You could do like the Jimmy rigged way where you just like rotate all of the objects in your scene, but then if you need to make further alterations, it might be a little messed up because they're not nice and square in the space. So we're gonna move this image, which is as easy as moving like a wood texture if we put it on an object and it's just like laying wrong. So we're gonna use that mapping node. So open up your shading or just open up your node editor somewhere, get to your node editor. If I have an object selected, it's gonna show that object's material mapped out. But I want to show the world's material. So the top left part of your node editor, you should have a drop down where you can select world. And here you can see we have a background texture popped in to our world output. And this texture is indeed that HDR. So it's just dragged in as you would a material shader. And that means we can hook up some nodes to it. So let's pop in that mapping node that always needs to go along with the texture coordinate one. So texture coordinate and mapping, hook up mapping to the image, and then we're actually going to hook up the generated toggle into the mapping one. So now we could rotate it around the Z, so it's just like rotating the sun. And let's go. I don't know which way. Okay, so this is the direction I want it to be going. You can see as I drag it, those shadows are moving because if you look at the grass behind, it's like rotating in space. So now our sun is over there rather than over there or something. So really simple to do, just hooking up our mapping node. Do keep in mind though, when you want to go back and like edit your materials, you do have the world one open, so switch back to object once you're done. But this should give us, oh yeah, I got rid of it because I was crashing. Our light coming into that door again with a little bit more depth to the color coming from that. So 2 ways to get that overhead light in. Sun, 2 suns. The sun and the sky sun, or an HDR image. And then complement the interior space with some artificial light. So really recommend finding a reference for this. And that's all for today.